Good afternoon. I'm Rev Dave Thompson. I'd like to welcome you back to our Civil Human Bible study. I'm a civil human minister, and so what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. So in an effort to do that, I'm looking at my tradition, and that is these Christian scriptures, to try to find those things that I as a human feel that can be extracted and applied to all humans across the board. Today we're in Matthew chapter 17, starting in verse 22 and going to 23. It's a short verse today, but I want to touch on some really important things today. So let's go ahead and jump into the passage. Again, it's Matthew 17, verse 22 and 23. Now while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and the third day he will be raised up." And they were exceedingly sorrowful. That seems like a pretty small verse, right? It seems like, and in fact, something that we probably have heard so many times for those of us who come from a Christian background in our churches, so many times, and has been portrayed in so many ways via passion plays, like dramatic presentations in churches, fiery sermons that are inspiring, songs that are sung, and Passion of the Christ movies that are made. And we almost feel like it's just old hat. At least at some times I can forget what this actually means to these people back then. And I want to talk a little bit about this context to give us a set to look at what's going on in probably the heart of Jesus and his disciples and of humans today who will be going through and have gone through the exact same thing. So let's first talk about the fact that they're now in Galilee. So we recently talked to them about, we talked about in our study about Jesus healing a demon-possessed son of a man who came to him. The disciples couldn't do it, and so Jesus said it was because you didn't have faith. Yesterday we talked a little bit about what faith looks like, and that was actually a really good conversation. It made me think about some of the reflections that I haven't had to do for a while, and so it was really great to talk about those terms and what faith means. So right now, they are gathered in Galilee. And it's an interesting word, gathered. It's twisted together. It's as if the emphasis is that every single disciple is there. Everybody who matters to Jesus is present right now in this room in Galilee. And then he says to them, "The Son of Man is about to be given to the hands of men, to be killed and to suffer, and he will be risen again in 3 days later." I want to walk through some of those words because they are important for us to understand what is really being said here. When he says Son of Man, we've talked about this a little bit before, but it means Jesus is describing his human reality. And this term also describes what's called the Messiah, which is the King of Israel, that in this time, the people of Israel are looking for the Savior who will take them out of the Roman occupation, that will turn Israel around and make them a giant, great nation again. But Jesus' intention, of course, isn't political, it isn't military, it is ideological. It is faith. It is foundational to the way that the whole society looks at everything. And so he says things are about to get rough. And this word "about" actually means at this very point of happening. In other words, we're about ready to face what we have put off for a while now. Jesus has been ministering and teaching and traveling around the area. He's been talking with people. He's nuanced and given some ideas to his disciples that this is going to happen. But this is the first time that he brings it to their attention and helps them understand that this is really going to happen. He says that he's going to be betrayed, given into the hands of men. This word "betrayed," it actually comes from two words in the Greek, and that means to be given from close beside. And it's this idea of somebody who we have considered, or Jesus considered, as a good friend or as a trustworthy person, who now is going to give Jesus up out of that trust and out of that relationship into the hands of really his enemies. We've all had experiences like that, and I want to talk a little bit about that at the end as one of the points of takeaways. But moving on quickly, in the hands of men, this word hand can literally mean, yes, hand, but it also has this meaning of the instrument a person uses to accomplish their plan. So in other words, Jesus is saying, I'm going to be given over to them, and they will run their plan. They will run their play, and it's not going to be good. It will be the death of me, but I will end up being raised again 3 days later, as he claims. So this question about on the third day being resurrected, I just want to point out, we'll talk probably in the future about Jesus' claims about the resurrection, looking at it as whether it is a historical account, whether it actually happened, what evidence there is, and what we can't know about it and what we can't prove, those kinds of things. I want to talk about those because it is an interesting point and something that many of the disciples later on used as a way to demonstrate to people that Jesus was this divine person as well. And then we're left with this one statement: they were grieved deeply. Now this word, it says suffered exceedingly. This word is actually a distressed, severe emotional pain. So these individuals have now come to the realization that somebody that they have given their lives to, that they have devoted their attention and their time, their emotion, and their reputation on, is going to be killed in a matter of days. And not only that, but by the people who have been harassing him since the beginning. We've seen in the past that the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the scribes, three of the bigger groups of the religious leaders of Israel at that time, Jesus was always being attacked by them and will continue to be, we'll see, up until he's actually handed over to be crucified. These individuals did not like Jesus because Jesus did not encourage Israel to do all of the law and all the purity laws and all the ritual, although he endorsed that and said, hey, that's part of this our culture, and some of these things are important to our faith, but what's most important are these virtues, these compassion, humility, long-suffering, forgiveness, showing mercy, having self-restraint. These are virtues that I also believe, as a human being approaching this, are transferable across the board to all humans, because they are present in every single one of our faiths in some fashion or another. I want to also point out, we often have just associated the crucifixion with Jesus, and it becomes sort of an icon. We have him hanging on the cross, and everybody seems to be okay with that. Yeah, everybody sort of feels that it knows that it's a terrible thing, but it really was a horrible thing. And for these disciples who loved Jesus, they realized that he was going to be raised up on a stake and had a brutal experience of being nailed to a piece of wood and hung until he dies. And it was very common in that time in the Roman Empire. Jesus was not the only person to be crucified. Hundreds, if not thousands, were also. And it was the death penalty, essentially. But Rome went a step further by leaving the people out there for everyone to see, so that they would be reminded of how serious this offense was. And Jesus now, even though he has spent his whole life teaching good things and doing good things for people, because he's upsetting the political power and the system and the wealth, they don't want him, and they don't care about what he's doing. They just want him out of the picture. I wanted to talk about this verse, these just two verses, because I think it's important for us to sometimes recognize that there are some similarities with what's going on back then. First, being betrayed is not just experienced by Jesus in these accounts. It's experienced by us today. Every single one of us, at least most of us, have had somebody that we have considered close and personal, that we trusted with our love and with our trust. And they gave us over or told people about us, things that we had shared in confidence, or did whatever it was that they did to hand them over. I grew up as a doctor's kid, my small town doctor. My mother also was in politics. She was the mayor of a small town, and I had to witness as a son of a politician what it's like to have somebody that you trust betray you and go for the other side. But not only that, say terrible things and do hurtful things, all because of power, even in a small town. And sometimes small towns can be the most brutal politically. I had to learn that betrayal is kind of part of life, and that I have to learn to forgive these people, and that I shouldn't just forget trusting people, that I should continue to trust people, because there are trustworthy people out there. Just because I got a bad apple doesn't mean that there aren't good apples out there. So I would just encourage you, if you have been betrayed or feel betrayed, to just continue to trust. Two other things. People will always have their agendas. These Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes, their agenda was to destroy Jesus and eventually to kill him. That was their agenda. Jesus did what he did regardless of that. Today, in our political system, in our church and religious systems, there are people who have an agenda. And that agenda may not line up with the virtues that they claim to uphold. And in those situations, it is vital for us to step back and to look at these virtues. Compassion. Are they a compassionate person? Humble. Or do they show humility, or do they brag about themselves? Merciful. Are they merciful, or do they not care about people who are suffering? Self-controlled. Do they hold back their wrath and anger, or do they bully people and make fun of people and slander individuals? These are the things that we test to decide who's going to be better for us and who's not, and to discern what people's true agenda is. The last thing I want to share today is that there are people right now who are suffering as a result of doing good. Yes, there are politicians actually out there who are trying to do good. They don't care about money. They don't care about power. They really want to help people. And if you know somebody who is that, encourage them. We need them more than ever right now. And if you know somebody who is doing something good, is either part of a nonprofit or just does something as a hobby to help others, encourage them. Right now, it is discouraging, especially for those who are trying to help people, because it becomes overwhelming. There's enough stress as a result of having to look at the suffering of people. Add to that the reality that there are other people who could care less about these people. They're there for the money, they want the power, and that's all they care about, really. They may tell us that they care about all these other things, but the reality is they don't. Encourage these people, because these people are important right now. Without them, we will not have a good future. Right now, more than ever, we need them to help secure our hope, to help secure the ability to live in peace, and to help our fellow human. Thank you so much for being a part of this Bible study. Again, I really appreciate how much you've encouraged me as I'm trying to do this. And it's not the normal way to go about reading the Bible, I realize, and extracting specific things and leaving others behind, I understand, is not the traditional way to look at the scriptures. But this is what I'm trying to do in order to build common ground, in order to build peace, so that we understand that every single one of us contribute good things, that every single one of us can can hold on to core values that are shared across the board. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And until then, I want to say to you that I love you. And I hope you choose to love yourself. It's the only love that we have any control over. And now, I invite you to join me as we go about the rest of our day, loving our neighbors the same way. Thank you.